I'm Delaney. And yes, I paid for the entire Christmas dinner. Every fork, every flower, every bite. But when it came time for gifts, my sister handed me a small box. Inside, a life coaching course on how to manage money. In front of everyone. No one stood up for me. Not my parents, not even my cousins. But what hurt most wasn't the gift. It was the years they spent pretending I didn't matter. Why would a family erase you while smiling in your face? And what happens when the quiet one finally stands up? I pulled up to my sister Vienna's estate just as the December light faded into a deep winter blue. Her mansion loomed like it always did. Grand, flawless, cold. I parked at the far end of the driveway in my modest sedan, deliberately chosen for nights like this. The irony wasn't lost on me. Every garland, every gourmet platter, even the crystal centerpieces inside that house had been funded by my own wire transfer. Quietly, of course. That's how they liked me. Quiet. Inside, the warmth and noise hit like a wall. Dozens of relatives sipped champagne and chatted in polite tones. I spotted my name nowhere on the display boards or welcome signs. Not surprising. I took a deep breath, shrugged off my coat, and stepped into the crowd like a ghost dressed in navy. Dinner began soon after. As everyone clinked glasses and settled in, Vienna stood up, her sequined dress catching the chandelier's sparkle. "I just want to say," she began, pausing for dramatic effect, "this year's celebration wouldn't have been possible without the support of Shale Tech and myself." Laughter erupted around the table. Not a word about me. I stared at my untouched wine glass, hiding my clenched jaw behind a neutral smile. Twist the knife a little more, why don't you? After all, I only paid for the whole damn thing. But sure, let's applaud the queen of appearances. After dessert, the gift exchange began. Vienna had done her usual over-the-top production. Leather briefcases for the uncles, diamond studs for the aunts, tech gadgets for every cousin with a trust fund. When it was my turn, she gave me a small white box wrapped in a red ribbon labeled "Special Gift." I should have known something was off. I opened it slowly. Inside was a printed certificate for a 6-week online course, Financial Literacy and Career Confidence for Women in Transition. There was a pause, then a few muffled laughs around the room. My mother's chuckle cut through me the sharpest. Vienna smiled, syrupy sweet. "I thought you could use a little guidance, sis. You know, since you're still figuring things out." Still figuring things out. I folded the paper neatly and put it back in the box. "That's thoughtful," I said, hearing my voice sound distant in my own ears. They saw me as a failure, a charity case they could dress up and condescend to once a year. They didn't know that the woman they humiliated had signed a multi-million-dollar acquisition deal last week, one that would change the family business forever. I stayed composed. I'd learned long ago that real power doesn't shout. My gaze swept over the table. Their laughter faded into background noise. I raised my glass, not to toast, but to mark this moment, this insult, this line in the sand. They thought I was weak. Let them. She really gave me a life coach certificate and thought it was generous. I needed air. Slipping past the dessert trays and polite chatter, I headed for the back patio. The cold stung my face, but I welcomed it. It was honest. Unlike everything inside that house. I stood under the string lights lining the garden hedge, trying to collect myself, when voices drifted from near the wine table. "She's always needed help," Aunt Odette was saying, just loud enough for her circle to hear. "Vienna paid her rent more than once, you know. Poor thing never found her footing." My lungs went still. I leaned in slightly, not blinking. Another cousin chimed in with mock sympathy. "At least she's here tonight, that's something." That's something? It hit like a slap. I had bought the wine they were sipping, paid for the chef who made the filet mignon they raved about, and somehow I was still the family project. Pitied, dismissed, whispered about as if I wasn't standing just 10 feet away. I stepped back into the hallway, wiping my palms on my dress. Suddenly, every smile felt like a pat on the head. A few aunts came up with lines like, "We're so proud of you for showing up," and "You look, well?" Their eyes didn't meet mine for long. I knew that look. It was the same one people gave lost dogs, grateful they hadn't bitten anyone yet. I moved toward the front of the house, hoping to stay invisible for the rest of the evening. But fate had other plans. A local news van was pulling up the circular drive. Within minutes, a pair of reporters entered, smiling, camera ready. Vienna greeted them like old friends. "Welcome! Tonight's celebration is Shale Tech's way of giving back to our people, our family. We're all about community." I froze near the stairway. She was using my money, my event, to stage a PR stunt. Of course she was. Of course Vienna would hijack the moment, spin it, and erase me completely. The cameras rolled as she guided the crew through the rooms. Every pose, every quote was perfectly curated, and in every single shot, I noticed something. I was either blocked out or ushered away politely. "Delaney, can you move just a bit to the side? We just need Vienna and Mom in this frame, thanks." "Oh, you're not in the family division, are you? This is just for internal use." It wasn't accidental. It was precision. They didn't just forget me. They made sure I didn't exist. I stood at the far end of the hallway, watching my reflection in the glass. The hum of the party blurred behind me, all laughter and fake affection. But I was done playing polite. You want me invisible? Fine. Just don't blink when I finally show you who I really am. I slipped up the back staircase, my heels quiet on the polished hardwood, escaping the flashing cameras and sugar-coated cruelty downstairs. The second-floor balcony overlooked the snowy garden below, twinkling lights, trimmed hedges, picture perfect. Too perfect, like everything Vienna touched. I leaned on the railing, tugged my coat tighter around me, and pulled out my phone. The cold bit at my fingers as I scrolled through an old photo album. Birthdays, recitals, award ceremonies. My face in the background blurred. Vienna front and center every time. Her name etched into every speech, every toast. Mine? If it showed up at all, it was in the form of a thank you for attending. The sound of voices below broke the quiet. I froze. My mother's voice floated up from the garden path. Vienna always had that spark, didn't she? I mean, Delaney's sweet, of course, just always lost in her little worlds, drawing, daydreaming. Some girls grow out of that. Vienna laughed softly. She still thinks that hobby of hers is going to pay off someday. Maribel added, "Not everyone is built for real success, and that's okay. Delaney was never meant for pressure." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. It wasn't just a dinner snub, wasn't just a forgotten thank you. This was how they spoke when they thought I wasn't listening. This was the truth beneath the smiles. A memory pushed its way into my mind. My high school art show. I'd come home with a certificate and a small cash prize for first place. I had practically run into the house, clutching the paper, proud. My dad glanced at it and said, "You know this won't pay your bills, right?" My mom smiled with her lips, not her eyes. Vienna snorted and muttered, "Cute. You got a ribbon for coloring." It wasn't just tonight. It had always been this way. I looked out at the garden again, watched them laugh below me, mother and daughter, bonded in a shared delusion that I had somehow failed them by choosing my own path. But failure? No. I had succeeded, in silence on my terms, building something they couldn't even imagine. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just stood there, breathing in cold truth. If they see me as a dreamer, I'll show them what dreams really become. I returned to the living room just as the last of the guests were collecting coats and murmuring goodbyes. The fire crackled gently in the marble hearth, casting flickers of gold across the glossy floor. I stepped around a server clearing champagne flutes, and found my father planted near the drinks cart, glass of scotch in hand, his expression unreadable. "Delaney," he said, nodding me over. "Got a minute?" I did, barely. He gestured to an empty chair beside him, then leaned on the mantel. "Vienna's digital division is expanding. They're going to need someone to handle design work, onboarding decks, training slides, that sort of thing. It's not glamorous, but it's a start." I blinked. "We'd start you on a contract basis," he added, swirling the amber liquid. "Could turn into something real, steady income, benefits. You could use some structure." Structure, a real job. After I'd built a creative empire behind closed doors, this man, who'd never once asked what I actually did, was offering me a temp gig formatting clip art for handbooks. I smiled faintly, held the glass he didn't offer, and replied, "That's generous of you." But inside, something in me cracked. So, I was now worthy of a corporate coloring book job because my sister needed filler content, not because I had skill or insight or success, just because they thought I was floundering. Before I could respond further, Colton wandered over, cheeks flushed from too much brandy. "Did I hear there's a job opening for our resident artist?" he teased, loud enough for two uncles to hear. "Hey, maybe Delaney can pay for next year's party in watercolor. That'd be adorable." A few chuckles followed. One of them muttered, "Feelings don't pay rent, sweetheart." Vienna, standing nearby, didn't stop them. She smirked into her wine. I scanned the room. Not a single voice rose to correct them. No one said, "She's actually doing well." No one asked me what I really did, how I lived, who I had become. It was like defending me would break the illusion they were so invested in. I felt my throat tighten, but I didn't let it show. "Not one of you will speak up for me." "Fine, but I will." The street outside Vienna's mansion was hushed, blanketed in the kind of cold that seeped through wool. I pulled my coat tighter and walked alone toward my car, heels clicking on the stone path. No one stopped me. No one followed. It was just me, the night air, and the weight of everything I hadn't said. Inside the warmth of my penthouse, I kicked off my shoes and poured myself a glass of Cabernet. The city lights twinkled through the tall windows behind me, proof that I lived in a world far different from the one my family pretended I couldn't survive in. I opened my real laptop, sleek, powerful, and everything the decoy I'd brought to the party wasn't. My inbox lit up. 2 missed messages from Marcus. Press draft approved. "Do we pull the trigger this week?" I took a sip, clicked over to the payment logs for the holiday event. Just routine cleanup, or so I thought. Scrolling down the list, something stopped me cold. Payee, Shale Tech Corp. Reference, Holiday Gala sponsorship amount, $58,340. Source, DreamArc Funds, Event Marketing. No way. I double-checked. My company had paid for everything, as planned, but Vienna had changed the vendor name. She routed it through Shale Tech's public account, which meant all public-facing credit now pointed to her company, not mine. I pulled up the press release she'd handed to the journalists. Shale Tech generously hosted tonight's event for family and local leaders. My name wasn't even mentioned in the fine print. It wasn't just rude anymore. This was theft. Theft of credit, theft of image, theft of reputation. She'd taken what I built, repackaged it in her name, and served it with champagne. My jaw clenched, but I didn't scream. Instead, I minimized the finance report and opened a locked folder. Acquisition Strategy, Shale Tech. Files I had spent 2 years preparing in silence. They thought they were smart, but I was prepared. My hand hovered over the keyboard. I pulled up my calendar, selected the Shale Tech board, and clicked Create Private Meeting. Subject line, Urgent, Restructure Proposal and Financial Disclosure. I typed one final sentence before sending. See you Monday. It's time the truth had the floor. You made me invisible. Now I'll make you answerable. The next morning, I stepped out of the Blacktown car and into the icy wind like I owned the pavement. Because in a way, I did. Shale Tech's towering glass exterior gleamed in the sun, oblivious to what was coming. I adjusted my tailored navy suit jacket and nodded to Marcus, waiting near the revolving doors. "They think it's a vendor pitch," he whispered, eyes glinting. "Let them." Inside, the executive boardroom buzzed with polished small talk. Vienna stood at the head of the table, her voice rehearsed and confident. "We're entering final discussions with DreamArc," she said smoothly, "an innovative content firm. This partnership will elevate Shale Tech's creative infrastructure." Board members murmured approval. I stepped in mid-sentence. Silence fell like a guillotine. Vienna blinked. "Delaney, this is a confidential session." Before I could speak, Marcus stepped forward. "She's not here as a guest." I walked calmly to the table and placed a folder in front of each member. Acquisition contracts, executive credentials, my name, my real name stamped on every page. "I'm here," I said clearly, "as the buyer." Everett, arms crossed, leaned forward. "What is this?" "It's real," Marcus confirmed, distributing signed financials. DreamArc has completed acquisition procedures. Effective immediately, your new majority stakeholder is sitting right here. Vienna looked like someone had just knocked the air out of her. You're DreamArc? She whispered. For over a decade, I said. While you were mocking me for drawing cartoons, I was building a studio that now owns the company you paraded as yours. Everett's face drained of color. This is a mistake. No, I cut in. The mistake was thinking silence meant failure. I turned toward the window, let them all process. We'll begin restructuring this quarter. Some divisions will merge, others will dissolve. I faced Vienna again. You may reapply for a creative position, if you're qualified. The silence in the boardroom had a weight to it. It wasn't just quiet, it was loaded, tense, the kind of silence that doesn't ask questions but waits for the fallout. Vienna's hand hovered inches above the contract. Her fingers trembled, though she tried to make it look like composure. The thick DreamArc letterhead stared back at her, taunting in its clarity. She looked from the page to me, her jaw tightening, nostrils flaring. Her face twisted through a spectrum of disbelief, first confusion, then rage, and finally, a flicker of something that almost looked like fear. You can't do this, she said, voice sharp, but not as sure as it had always been. I built this division. I made Shale what it is today. You wouldn't even be in that chair if it weren't for me. I didn't flinch, didn't raise my voice. I just spoke with the kind of calm that made people listen. You built it on my silence, on my ideas, on access you never earned but took anyway. You built it on the assumption I'd stay quiet. But now, that foundation is mine. A cough broke the tension. One of the older board members, Mr. Carrington, adjusted his tie and shifted uncomfortably in his chair. No one said anything in Vienna's defense. Not even Everett, her longtime ally who sat across from her, staring at the table like it might open up and swallow him whole. Marcus, my chief counsel, stepped forward and began handing out packets, clean, crisp folders, each sealed with DreamArc's embossed emblem, the kind of paper that announced finality. Effective immediately, Marcus said. DreamArc assumes controlling interest in Shale Tech Holdings. As of this morning, we hold 54% ownership, with board ratification signed and filed. Vienna's eyes shot toward Everett, silently begging for a lifeline. He didn't look up, and then the doors at the back of the room swung open. My assistant, calm and efficient as always, entered and handed me the press release. One copy, printed on the same heavy stock we'd used for investor summits. I didn't add drama. I didn't clear my throat. I just read the statement out loud, word for word. As of December 26th, DreamArc has finalized its acquisition of a majority stake in Shale Tech Corporation. The board of directors officially welcomes its new CEO and transition team. All further leadership decisions will be made under the updated governance charter. Vienna's breath caught. Her posture faltered, like the words had knocked the wind out of her. That was the moment she realized. This wasn't a negotiation. This was the moment she stopped running the room. I turned to her. You have two options. Walk out now with whatever dignity you have left, or stay and contribute under the new structure. You'll have no title, no vote, no power. But if there's still value in your work, you can stay. As a contributor, that's all that's left. She stood motionless for a beat, processing, calculating. Her pride flared, and her voice cracked as she tried to hold on to control. You really think you're better than me? I met her gaze. No, I think I've always been capable. You just couldn't stand to see it. Her chair screeched as she shoved it back, the sound harsh and jarring against the marble floor. She didn't say another word. She stormed out, heels sharp against the hallway tile. I didn't follow her. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just stood there, breathing in the space she left behind. I hadn't come for revenge. I came to stop being underestimated. And I finally did. I sat alone in my office, lights dimmed, the city flickering beneath me. The headlines were everywhere. My name, my company, the takeover. It should have felt victorious, but all I felt was stillness. My phone buzzed every few minutes. Uncles, cousins, even my mother now suddenly remembering I existed. I didn't respond. Let the silence speak for me, the way I had to learn to speak for myself all these years. The front desk buzzed. Vienna's here. She said she just wants to talk. For a long second, I said nothing. Then, "Send her up." She walked in without makeup, no designer coat, no entourage. Just Vienna, stripped bare. Her voice was small. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" I tilted my head. "Tell you what?" "That you were building this. That you mattered." I leaned back. "Because I knew what you'd do. You'd claim it, redirect it, mold it into something that fit your idea of what success should look like. You would have stuck your name on it before I even finished the logo." Her shoulders sagged. "I kept it quiet because it was the only thing I ever had that was mine." She looked around the space, modern, minimalist, quietly powerful. "So, what happens now?" I stood, walked over to the side table, poured her a glass of water. No celebration, no champagne. "You want a place here? Fine, but it'll be earned. No more shortcuts, no more handouts, entry level, no title, no favors." Her voice cracked. "You want me to start from scratch?" "No," I said, locking eyes with her. "I want you to finally understand what it feels like to build without anyone stealing the spotlight. I want you to earn your place, like I did." She didn't respond, just nodded, glass still in hand, before turning toward the door. As it closed behind her, I stepped out onto the rooftop balcony. The winter air cut through my sleeves, but I welcomed it. Clear, honest. Forgiveness had already begun. But return, that wasn't part of the deal. The next morning at Dreamark, I stood before the full team. Some new, some loyal since the beginning. I wasn't here to gloat. I was here to lead. We build with merit. We lead with quiet brilliance. And from now on, no one gets left in the shadows. No applause, no fanfare. Just nods of understanding. It was enough. That evening, Everett hosted a subdued family dinner at a private club in Biltmore Village. No photographers, no press releases, just porcelain plates and strained conversation. Maribel barely said a word, stabbing at her salad like it wronged her. Colton stayed fixated on his phone. Vienna showed up late, slipped into a seat near the end, wearing a plain gray sweater instead of her usual designer armor. No one greeted her. She didn't expect them to. The power shift wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It lived in the silences, the glances, the subtle edge in everyone's voice when they said my name. After the plates were cleared, Everett motioned for me to step out to the terrace with him. We stood side by side, facing the city skyline that once felt so far from me. "You proved me wrong," he said softly, no bravado in his tone. "And you didn't even have to shout to do it." I nodded. "I didn't do it to prove you wrong." He looked at me. "Then why?" I met his gaze. "Because I was tired of apologizing for being exactly who I am." No hug, no tears. But something shifted. Respect, maybe, or at least recognition. Later that night, I returned to my home studio. The one room no one had ever touched. The same easel stood in the corner, half covered by a forgotten sheet. I pulled it off and unrolled an old canvas. Unfinished, jagged, honest. I picked up a brush and dipped it into cobalt blue. No purpose, no pitch. Just for me. Because even with a company, a title, and silence conquered, I was still a creator. And this was still mine. I thought back to everything they took. The way they laughed, erased, minimized, but none of it owned me now. "They took my name off everything," I whispered as the brush glided across the canvas. "So I built something they couldn't touch." A pause. "They erased me in public, so I reclaimed myself in silence." And I smiled, not with bitterness, but with release. I gave them Christmas. They gave me a final gift too. One they didn't even realize they were handing me. The push I needed to stop apologizing. If there's one thing this journey taught me, it's this. You don't need to scream to be powerful. You don't need validation to have value. Sometimes, the loudest kind of strength is the one that builds in silence and rises when no one expects it. I spent years thinking I had to be smaller to be accepted. That love meant sacrificing who I was. But I've learned that peace doesn't come from keeping others comfortable. It comes from being honest about your worth and refusing to let it be negotiated. So if you're watching this and you've ever been overlooked, dismissed, erased, don't shrink, don't beg, build. And when you rise, let it be with dignity, not revenge. because the most powerful thing you can ever do is choose yourself. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where you were underestimated or dismissed by your own family? What did you do? Or what do you wish you had done differently? Drop a 1 in the comments if the story touched your heart. Or tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know. If this video didn't quite hit for you, I still want to hear why. Your voice matters here. And most importantly, if stories like this resonate with you, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. This channel is for people who've lived, endured, risen, and still believe in second chances. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and never let anyone steal your light.